Hi, Paul Thomson here from Spitfire Audio. Very excited today to show you the latest episode of our Abbey Road Orchestra series. This is the Flutes, a two-person flute section, beautifully played, sampled with the depth that you would expect from this line, with all the controls that you've come to expect with the soft entries and all that kind of stuff. It's just absolutely glorious. So let's dive straight in and I'll show you what's going on under the hood. So the performance legato has three different attacks. When you press gently, you get that very gentle, soft attack. There's the normal medium attack. And then a marcato, a slightly harder, punchier attack. Which gives you that strong entry to the note. So you've got those to select from. And then in terms of the transitions, you can use the normal legato transition. So that's the standard legato. We also have two other legatos in here, the allegro legato, which is especially good at these kind of passages. So this was recorded in the same way that we recorded the legato allegro in the strings, and it's very focused on giving you those intervallic leaps it's a different type of performance, and it just sounds much more realistic for those quicker moving passages. And then of course we've got the runs at the top. So as you can hear, all of those work together. It's you don't have to worry about everything. It's just going to work as you play. If you really want to go into detail with these and choose specific articulations, then of course on the final page of the articulations, you have those separated out so you can just focus on those. Or you can of course build your own patch, which switches. You can switch with key switching, with speed, with dynamic, with CC control. There's all kinds of ways you can build up your own preferred way of working within this library. So let's look at the lyrical legato next. This also has the slow entry and the normal entry, but not the marcato entry. And it's set so that you're hearing more of the transition sound between the notes for these kind of slower moving, more elegiac melodies like this. You can really hear the texture of the note changes. You hear the very slight bump as the player goes to change note. And when you don't need to play as fast, you can use this one to squeeze all of the kind of emotion out of those kind of changes. We of course have the extended version of the longs. So this has the three different note attacks on, so we can demonstrate those. So if I just put the mod wheel at the top, we have the slow entry, standard, and harder. So as you can hear there, I'm controlling the dynamic. I'm using the velocity, the key velocity to control the attacks. And I'm also using the vibrato control to move between vibrato and non-vibrato. So it's a very wide range of expressive possibilities to help you really get your kind of musical phrases out there. Now, the next one is one of my favorite articulations. And that sounds like this. So as you can see, we can still use the mod wheel. It's not just a one thing fits all. We can still use the dynamic control on the mod wheel to control the amount of kind of burst of air at the start of the note. But it gives you some really powerful extra expressive possibilities having this kind of overblow attack on the notes. It's that really, really strong, beautiful punch at the beginning of a note. Now, to go along with those, we've got our various different short notes. So we've got 2 staccatos, a staccatissimo, a marcato, and a tenuto. And all of these work in the same way as the strings, so that you can alter the amount of release that you get on these notes. Let me demonstrate. Let's load up the marcatos first. And I'll go to release. And you'll see that it's where it's set naturally is here. Now, if I let go, that's the standard length. But if I pull this down, or all the way to the bottom, and you can see that I can hold it to get the full length of the note. This is incredibly useful. And you can, of course, assign release to a CC, very, very simple. If you just control click and then it's set to 17, but you can relearn it as any control that you want. Then as you're playing, you can move that CC control or program it into your DAW and change the lengths of the notes that are going to happen when you play it staccato. It sounds complicated, but it gives you another level of expressiveness on these marcato notes for the note lengths. And if you vary that, you can get very, very realistic sounding phrases and combine all of these different elements, the staccatos, which we'll look at now, the staccatissimos and the tenutos. So the standard staccato is this. And as you can hear, key velocity determines the dynamic. We've got an alternative staccato. And as you can see, if you hover over the articulation, you get these tooltips that appear in the bottom left. But this is just an alternative. It's got a bit more of a kind of détaché style, a little bit more attack. It's just a bit crisper. So it gives you an alternative. It's not massively different on the length, but it's just another useful, different one that you can switch between. The staccatissimo is obviously the shortest. We have the marcato as heard earlier. And then finally we have our tenuto. Again, a lovely wide dynamic range. Now, you can set up your own performance patches to switch between these. You can use all kinds of different things. As we mentioned before, you can control, in fact, I'll just open it up so you can see. So at the moment it's set to key switch, but you can use CC range for a specific CC, velocity range, MIDI channel, speed, and program changes to switch between the articulations to give you, people work in different ways. So you can absolutely tailor it to exactly the way that you want to work. Now, among my favorites, and we've been recording these for many years, we have a specific way of recording these. And that is the velocity is now controlling the dynamic. So, and the mod wheel or CC1 controls the type of ending. Shorter and shortest. So, a huge amount of musical possibility contained even within just those 3 different styles of ending. We have the triple tongue, of course. And let's put that back up to the longest. And the quad tongue. And the flutter. It's a really useful proper note there, but with the flutter tongue. And I love the fact that it's just slightly less active when you go down in dynamic. And then as you go up in dynamic, it becomes slightly more active. But it's not like many of these flutter tongues are just kind of a slightly odd special effect. This is really, really usable. And I've used it already actually a couple of times. The trills, again, we've got our dynamic control, but we have a major second as well, a minor third, And if you want, you can combine these in really interesting ways to make chords. So for example, and this kind of thing. Or, and of course, using them in combination gives you a really nice effect as well. Finally, on the last page here, we have the standard long without the extension, so without the different attacks. And then our individual legatos here. Again, non-extended versions for these. And then the slurred, allegro, and runs on their own. If you just want to use that solely on its own and you don't want to switch between the different types, you can just focus on that. Now, let's go back to our staccatissimo so that I can show you the difference between the different mixes and mics. So the two mixes, obviously this has all been impeccably recorded by Simon Rhodes, Grammy awarded recording engineer of huge distinction. We've got the two mixes that Simon designed. The first mix here, as you've been hearing. And if we switch to mix 2, and again, the tooltips are incredibly useful here. So you can see a tighter mix formed from tree 2, because we had 2 deca trees up with different mics, one omnis, one cardioid, mids and outriggers 2 with a curated blend of spots. So that sounds like this. Very useful. Totally different sound, as you can hear. The section overheads. So it gives you a very tight sound and a very dry sound, just a hint of the room hanging behind, but it's still an overview of the instruments. Here are the spot mics. And as Simon suggests, you can blend these with the section overheads to get the balance of sound that you want. So both up full, less close, more close spot. You see how the stage and the kind of 3D nature of the sound changes according to the balance that you have of those different mics. Now we have our pop mixes as well. So the main is a stereo cardioid mic placed above the section and panned right down the middle, so that you've got this, you can do what you want with this. This is designed to just give you the full range punchy sound. You can just hear the room in the background, but if you want to change that and add much more of the room, then we could balance in and add in the pop room sound. Now this has omnis placed either side of the section to give you the kind of audio coming back from the walls and the ceiling and the floor. On its own, you get the idea. It's that roomier sound, still incredibly useful. Then we have the individual trees. So let's pop up tree 1. So tree 1 is your more standard tree that matches, for example, the tree in the other Spitfire library. So it's a standard M50s. And that gives you the deca sound, omnidirectional mics, a lush and full sound. Now our second tree, again, a deca tree, but with more directional mics. You can hear a really huge difference between those two. And similarly, we have the outriggers to match. So here with outriggers 1, we've got omnis to give you the widest possible sound. I tend to mix this in with the tree when I'm setting up my own mix, and it might be, I might lean more heavily on the outriggers. That's one of my favorite sounds. It really, to me, that gives me that absolutely filmic sound. Now, the second set of outriggers are the more directional outriggers. This will give you that a great kind of film sound, but it will be slightly narrower and slightly more pointed. For the mids, this is often useful for bringing the section forward slightly in the mix. To hear it maybe more as a slightly more featured section. These are valve reds. And it's actually interesting. Let's just pop back to the performance legato. And you can hear when you're playing these kind of more singing phrases that using the mids kind of makes it sound a little bit more like a solo. It makes it sound slightly more featured. So very, very useful there. Next, we have the most distant mics, which are the omni ambient mics. And then we get into our vintage signals. So first up, the RM1B ribbon mics. And these are conductor perspective, so vintage scoring stage. And you can hear it's got that ribbon characteristic. It's a slightly more compressed sound. It's slightly rolled off the top end. It's got the extra bit of warmth in there. Actually, again, let's just quickly flip back to the performance legato to hear the effect. It's useful not only for recreating a vintage sound. Of course, it's great for that, but it's also good for putting into a different context. So I might use one of these as a featured sound over something that sounds a little bit more hybrid or more kind of modern scoring style. And then you put this one over, it just, I don't know what it is. It's not as kind of crisp and high fidelity. And therefore, when you're blending it with something which has bags of character in it, it matches slightly better. But it's incredibly useful to have that in your toolkit. And again, we have the 44BX, our vintage 2 signal. Two different flavors, very useful. You'll have seen us using those in the other libraries as well. Now, the alternative close mic are these ribbon closes. And you can hear a little bit more of the room because the ribbon mics are figure of 8, so they are going to pick up a little bit more from the back. But on the other hand, with a ribbon mic, you obviously need a little bit more sound pressure. And therefore, it doesn't make such a huge difference. You're not hearing loads of room coming back at you. It's just a very useful extra flavor, and one that, again, I really love using as a performance on a melody. Last but not least is our spill, which is everything else. It's all the other section mics, everything that we haven't used so far. And the idea of this is that you can use it to extend the 3D soundstage, to add a little bit of realism. It's the flutes being picked up by everything else, all the other section mics. And you can tell exactly from that. You can picture it if you close your eyes. Yeah, it does what it says on the tin. Let's jump back to mix 1 with our lyrical legato. I'll play you one last lovely melody. And as you can see, I haven't touched the expression control at all yet. Now, I would use it. I would use it just to shape my entries and my exits a little bit more, possibly, add a little bit of extra dynamic here and there. But there just is so much beautiful natural dynamic in these recordings and in the way that the library has been assembled by the team at Spitfire. It just sounds absolutely glorious. I've had so much fun with it so far. And I'm finding that it fits that expressive need that you have with the flutes, as well as giving you the kind of aggressive style as well. And the flute is not the most aggressive instrument. It's not like the piccolo. Yes, you can get some nice overblow bursts from it, but it's not the thing that has the massive dynamic range of the orchestra, but it has its own character. And what I love about the library here with the Abbey Road Orchestra flutes is that we've captured bags and bags of character from these incredible flautists who have played on the library. Thank you very much for watching. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye-bye.